everyone who has a home with a pet should definitely be using a basic first aid kit. You want to make sure that you keep your kit in your home, and if you're traveling, you take it with you in your car. And then you want to tailor it to your pet's needs and lifestyle. So we talked about people that take this course. It's usually pet professionals or dog walkers or groomers, things like that. They'll tailor it where they have a little bit more variety of things inside. Whereas a pet owner will literally specifically get things that they've used on their pet, and then you just restock them. So I'm going to actually show you guys really quickly my pet first aid kit that I've done for my dog, and then I had it for my dog walking previously. So it's a huge box, as you can see. It's very easy to carry around. I have several different muzzles. So when you're dealing with pet first aid, an animal that has been injured will always have a fight or flight type of response. So you want to make sure you're protecting yourself. So an animal that's been hit by a car, you're going to help them. You definitely want to be able to muzzle them. I have this muzzle because my dog is a squishy face dog, so they're really hard to find muzzles that fit over their mouth and nose. So that's the one I have for my dog. I have a ton of different other sized muzzles in here for different sized animals, cats, dogs of different sizes. So that's your first step of dealing with any kind of emergency situation. I have gloves so that I can protect myself if I'm dealing with anything. I have syringes. So a lot of the times, being a pet parent or a pet professional, you have to administer medication. So there's liquid medications, there's eye, oral, things like that. So you want to have different ways of administering medication. I know we talked about injuries of the nails and how painful they can be. So this is called septic powder. And what this does is it stops bleeding. So if you cut a nail to the quick, it will actually stop the bleeding if you put this powder on it. I have tick twisters because ticks were pretty, rampant this year in the city and outside in cottage country. I have blunt end scissors, which is really helpful to cut any kind of bandages that you might use. What else do I have? I have lots of stuff. I have cold compress. I have bandaging. I have an extra leash in here. I used to carry this pet first aid kit in my car, and the amount of dogs, stray dogs that I saw walking around that I'd have to go help. So even though it's just a leash, I can still run it through and loop on if I need to grab a dog really quickly that might be lost. I have emergency ID tags in case I need to ID a dog or put information on them. There's rope in here. I have a toothbrush because, like we talked about, dental hygiene being really important. There is an emergency blanket. So if you're dealing with any kind of cold injuries, would be really good to have those in there.
What is that rope for?
The rope, literally for anything that you can use. So we teach a technique that if you absolutely don't have a muzzle, you can use a rope to kind of muzzle the animal. If you don't have a leash like I do, you can tie it around their neck so that you have control and can take them if you need to. So it has a lot of uses, even to transport if you have to tie them onto a board to transport them out if they're severely injured and can't walk. So there's lots of uses for the rope. It just really depends the situation that you're in. I have a feminine pad. I recommend everyone to put one of these in their pet first aid kit because it absorbs blood. It absorbs blood and it's sticky on one side. So when you're in a bind, if you're at the dog park type of situation and you need to kind of bandage something up really quickly, pulling that out and putting it around the wound will definitely help to stop bleeding. So I definitely recommend putting one of those in there. I have some saline solution. I have tweezers if you have to take out any kind of like debris or little things that might get stuck in a wound. The tweezers are really great as well. And I always recommend to have a container if you're going to be pulling a tick off of anyone. I actually have ticks in here that I showed during class. So you want to be able to get any ticks that you remove tested for Lyme's disease at your vet. So having that in there is really great. I have a list of other things on my PowerPoint as well.
In the meantime, there is a question. It says, what are the top 5 first aid items you will suggest putting in, say, a fanny pack for mobility and easy of access, like a first kid aid on the go, so the minimum necessary?
So I would definitely suggest putting in some gauze pads. So this kind of a gauze pads like this, and this type of bandage, so you can bandage up any kind of wounds really quickly. And then it just really depends on what you're exposing yourself to and where you're going. But definitely bandaging, gloves, and even your foil blanket, it's small enough that could fit anywhere if you're going hiking and things like that. It just really depends on where you're going.
Thank you. And there is a question regarding the previous slide when you check for your dog's skin in case there is a lump. Yeah. What are you looking for, like the size of the lump, or what will be a sign?
So with the lumps, it literally, there's nothing particular to say like this lump is bad. The one I found on my dog previously, it felt like it was under the skin. It almost felt like a coin underneath his skin. It was round and flat, and you couldn't see it, but you could feel it. And then the second time he had a lump, it actually looked like a skin tag. And we took him to the vet, and he said that he didn't think anything was wrong, and he biopsied it and then came back and said there was something wrong. So there's really no specific color that you can say or size, but I would say anything that you find, get it checked by your vet. If they say there's nothing wrong, then just continue to monitor it, that it's not growing. Did you want me to answer the other question above?
Forgive me, I was on mute. Yes, for sure.
So the other question was, are there any unusual signs that a dog or cat is choking that differ from humans? What is proper protocol if your pet is choking? So there are different signs. A lot of the times you can see the tongue turning blue, you can see the eyes bulging, and sometimes it'll even sound like they're coughing or trying to cork something up. It just depends on what's causing the choking that would change the signs of it. But signs usually include they're pawing at their mouth, bulging eyes, the tongue starts to change color, so it'll turn like a purplish blue. I think those are all the questions besides yours.
Yes, thank you. We will get back to the other ones later.
Yeah, no problem. So with your pet first aid kit, here are some useful items that you can include. So there's absorbent gauze pads, adhesive tape, antiseptic wipes. So for the person that asks something quick in a fanny pack, definitely alcohol swabs or wipes that you can kind of just rip open and use would be really great. The blanket, like I said, the foil emergency blanket, cotton balls, gauze, ice pack, disposable gloves. Scissors are really great. Petroleum jelly is just to lubricate the thermometer, but normally we don't take rectal temperatures as a pet first aid responder. Normally the vet will do that, but it's good to have it if you're going to be somewhere that you don't have access to a vet and you can call them and get talked through on how to do it. Sterile non-stick gauze pads for bandages, sterile saline solution is great, tweezers, and then a pillowcase. So if you have a cat, a pillowcase is really great to transport them because you can kind of grab them very quickly and get moving without them noticing what's going on. There's a whole list of ways to transport cats because they can be a little bit more difficult. But I definitely recommend going on YouTube and you can check out cat toweling videos. And that usually will show you how to handle a cat in an emergency situation. So I'm going to move on to a few other things. So there's Benadryl. I have Benadryl normally in my pet first aid kit. I don't have it in there right now because I actually have it in my home for my dog. So we have Benadryl all the time in case he has an allergic reaction. You definitely want to make sure that you're getting information from your vet on how much to administer to them. Another one is Polysporin that I use a lot. I literally have a Costco membership to buy Polysporin at this point because he goes through so much of it just from little scrapes and things like that. So any kind of antibiotic ointment is really great to have in your pet first aid kit. Ear cleaning solution, plastic eyedroppers or syringes like I showed, splints or tongue depressors. So it's just these little popsicle sticks that you can use. These are used mainly when you're having a bone or a joint injury and you need to kind of support that bone from moving around until you get to the vet. So these are always great to have in your first aid kit as well. This powder that we talked about that actually stops the bleeding, temporary ID tags, just in case you're in a situation where, your dog's collars come off and you have to just kind of make a temporary makeshift one. Towels are always great to have, especially if you can put them in your car, and then pliers just to kind of pull in anything that you need to. So I am going to move on to just a few classes that we have coming up. So I've actually just confirmed a class for April 2021. We'll be teaching it in the East York area. And if you're not local, you can always go on the Walks and Wags Pet First Aid website and check for class listings in your area. So they teach all over Canada, which is really great. So if you ever want to take a class, right now due to COVID, classes are a little bit more less and less, I would say, for the most part, but they are happening and they are following protocol where everyone's socially distanced. So you can definitely take a class in person and kind of get certified, whether you're a pet parent or a pet professional, and have those skills under your belt where you can kind of have ease and not worry about what do I do in that situation.
Can you paste the links in the chat as well, please?
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Great, thank you. So we can go through my questions, and for those of you that still have questions, feel free to throw them there. So one of the questions I had is CPR for humans the same than for dogs?
So there are similarities, but I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that the compressions are a little different. I know that human CPR changes every so often too on how many compressions and how many breaths and all of that. So essentially the techniques are similar, but the number of breaths and compressions might differ.
Mm-hmm. And then the other one I had is, I had the 3 cases that people say are common when you go on a walk with your dog or you're in a big dog park. So what do you do first, just before going to the vet, to your point, before like assisting before you get there? One of the things is torn or broken nails. What would you do in that case?
Yeah, so if you have that powder, I would definitely suggest to try to stop the bleeding as much as possible. And then you want to wrap it. So you would take your gauze and bandage it up just to kind of hold them over until you get to the vet.
What to do in case of a sprain to the paw?
With the popsicle stick that I had, I would splint it. So I would put the splints so that it's supporting the bone, so it's not going to cause further injury. There's different types of sprains and strains that you can get, but for the most part, you just want to make sure that they're comfortable and that you're not moving the bone more than it should be. So you would splint it and then transport them to the vet.
Great. And lately, and I hope I don't have to see these ever, but if there is a dog fight and there is some injury there.
What kind of injury? Like a puncture?
Well, I imagine the most common will be the puncture, yes.
Yes, so you definitely want to make sure that you have your first aid kit handy, and then you would kind of compress it so that you're stopping the bleeding, and then bandage it until you get to the vet. But definitely take your dog to the vet, because something very minimal that you think it might not be such a big injury could turn into a bigger injury. It could get infected. It could get, and you don't know the other dog's vet information most of the time. So I would definitely suggest getting that information if the owner is still around, making sure that the other dog has their vaccines and all of that.